Well, good morning all. Today I'm cutting a big DIY wedding. It is a great privilege to be asked to grow flowers for people to arrange themselves for their weddings. And they trust me, the people who order the flowers, to cut a mix which is going to be useful for them. So I thought you might enjoy a little session where I talk about why I'm cutting, what I'm cutting, numbers, mixtures, colour mix. And if you are planning to do your own wedding flowers, then it might help you when you come to cutting or planning your patch. But equally, if you're a flower grower and you cut mixed buckets for people, then this might be interesting for you too. And if you're new to the channel, you're very welcome. Please do subscribe, press the bell icon, and we'll tell you when we've got more clips coming up. And if any of the tips and tricks we give you along the way are useful, you can always buy me a coffee, or better still, join my club. The links to coffee buying and club membership are in the blurb to all my clips. Now, before I do anything, I'm just going to water my dahlias. They are pretty much ready to be planted out, but I'm not ready to plant them out yet. Listen to the rain. Now, there will be some floristry at the end of this clip. As is often the case, I'm making the bride's bouquet, the bridesmaid, and the buttonholes. And then the bride and groom are going to do all the flower arranging in a local village church to here, which is very nice. So there will be some floristry at the end. But first of all, I'm going to cut what's left of my ranunculus. They've been a really amazing crop, because we've had this cool May, so they've kept flowering really nicely. Ranunculus will stop flowering when it gets too hot, but it's never got too hot for them in here. So this is probably my last major cut of ranunculus for the year, but it's the end of May. It's the 30th of May, so, you know, well done ranunculus, they've done very well. And here they are still going. So I'm going to have them all. So when I'm cutting for a DIY wedding, obviously the client doesn't know what they're getting. They have an idea. They've seen pictures of what I've done before, but they haven't seen this collection. So I have to think about what they might do with it, but also be conscious of give it some wow factor. And what you'll see is this red, tiny little bit of red, is what will lift, which is what was otherwise a sort of purpley, pinky, and arguably a bit flat scheme, and give it a real zing, but there's hardly any, just a little bit of red. The other thing to look out for, these are sweet pea, a variety called nearly black, almost black. Oh, just say yes. And another thing to say is when I cut a bit of detail, so for example, these poppy seed heads, I love them. I'm taking off the Raggedy Ann bits, but I think they're really fun. My minimum they're having 10 mixed buckets, and then I'm making the bridesmaid and the buttonholes. So my minimum stem count for anything is 10. Because trying to make it focus, because the people making the flowers, look, aren't they great colour? That they can do something with 10. There's enough to do a repeat pattern, less, and they've just got odd stems, and they don't know what to do with them necessarily. But if you've got a minimum of 10 of something, then you've got something that you can repeat through the scheme. So actually they've got more than 10 of everything, but that's my minimum I would cut. And then just a couple of bright red ranunculus. See how you think bright red, really? But look what the colour does. It takes what could be a little bit bland, a little bit safe, and just revs it up. I really enjoy it as a look starts coming into the studio. Lovely foliage. There's going to be more of this red and more lovely foliage. Yes, ground elder, wonderful cut flower. Another little pop of colour from these geums, which are still going. They've been flowering for weeks. A little bit of alchemilla just coming. Not dock. This is wild sorrel. A little bit of stripy grass always lifts a look. And then those bright red sweet peas. Tea cake. Oh yes, and just say yes to those ranuncs which still come on and on. Completely in love with these poppy seed heads. They look as though they've been dipped in silver. And now we'll have some Sweet William rich colours only, I think. This is turning out to be a richly coloured wedding. So none of this pale and interesting malarkey. Oh no, let's have a hot to trot little moment. Next up, Sweet Rocket, Foxgloves, and Facelia. You have to sing when you cut Facelia. Facelia, you're breaking my heart. You see, look at the colours. They're really popping. It's sort of informal but rich at the same time. Now, it may seem as though the colours I've been cutting are kind of extreme, not weddingy. And it's true, they're quite rich and dark and sort of luxuriously velvety. So this is where I turn it from fun party flowers into wedding. And it's with the roses. So I'm going to calm the colour. So I've got quite hot with the colour, been quite rich with the reds. And I'm now going to soften it all up. And you will see them in the mix because the mix is richer, the background is richer. So we're going to have paler pink roses. We're going to soften the colour palette, and the truly luxurious part of the mix is the roses, and they are going to be the weddingy part. So we have plenty of contrast and depth of field, but the client will have that weddingy feel with the roses. You know, there's a limit to how much I can play fun games. You know, this is somebody's wedding. It's very important that they feel it's weddingy. So here come the roses. Now it's Thursday and you can see these are Gentle Hermione and they will be fully out for Saturday. So I'm going to cut anything where the green outer layer of the rose bud is popping because they will be out for Saturday. And more of this lovely dark leafed chocolate mint for the posies on the tables. So delicious. Right, a little detail for the bride's bouquet. Oh yes. This little deutzia was dumped in the lugfall here years ago. And every year it just gives me a little detail for somebody's bouquet. And look at the arching fronds of the Physocarpus Diablo. Just say yes. So we have an infestation of slugs, the like of which I haven't seen for years. And so we've brought in the heavy guns to help before I plant out my dahlias and my tender annuals. So here we are, 12 buckets, and there's plenty of green for background, but depth, the depth of field, a little bit of very bright red, just to lift it all and stop it being gloomy. Sweet peas tucked in there. So it's kind of a pinky purple base, but with a zing of orange geum just to lift it. And a tiny bit of red in the Sweet William, which is also a lot of pink. A couple of really red ranunculus. And otherwise, it's a sort of wild and hairy, but at the same time luxurious look, which is what I had been going for. I don't know if I can fit it all in one frame. Oh, I don't think I can. So here is the bride. Oh yes, I very like her. She's colourful, lively, plenty of movement, not too heavy. So it's 7 o'clock the next morning and I have to remind myself why I make these clips. It's not just that I want you to come and see what I've got growing and what I'm doing. I have to remember the point of this one was to talk about the balance of what I've cut for this wedding. So I'm going to flip the camera and show you, and hopefully it will all make sense. So first of all, what you should be able to do is you should be able to stand back from this and be able to see that there is about a third of the mix is foliage, or green, or dark rust in this case. About a third. And it's about a third. About a third of the mix is heavier, punchier colours, wow factor. So we've got 100 stems of ranunculus there, and tucked inside there are the roses just getting ready to pop for tomorrow. Some more ranunculus over here, and the lavatra, and that's your kind of, those colours are going to pop like pew in the mix when the bridesmaid her arrangements up. And then the third, we've got filler, sort of the froth, things like these lovely little geums. Not masses of them. When they're in the mix, they just pop a little bit. So a big bucket of them like that, they look quite, you're like, oh, that's got a lot of orange. But when you soften them with a bit of, look at that, ground elder. Yes, waste not, want not. But when you soften them with the other frothy bits, including a little bit of wild sorrel, then they come together really nicely. So look at the bride's bouquet. Here's the bride, and you see how the orange geum, now it's in the mix, is there, but it's not an orange. Well, it is, but it's just, it lifts with, imagine that bouquet without the orange geum. The colours would be quite flat. Even with the lovely red sweet pea, the colours would be quite flat. So the orange just pings it a little bit. So that's that mix that you've just seen in the buckets, arranged into the bride's bouquet and the bridesmaid's posy. And I'm about to make the buttonholes. And then there's one more thing to add. If you were cutting buckets for yourself, or if you've got clients who are buying mixed buckets from you, so there are things that I've just put a little bit. So the sorrel, I think she's got about 15 stems of sorrel. It's not going to be a big part of it, but it is very fresh and wild looking to make the mix look very country. I've given her some foxgloves, not masses. Again, I think she's got 20. And that's a little bit of height, because they're doing flowers for the church. Give her a little bit of height, but not to overwhelm the whole thing. If I give her masses and masses of foxgloves, she might feel overwhelmed and not know what to do with them. So to have just, she's not going to make every arrangement. Not every arrangement is going to have foxgloves in it. There'll be just a couple of larger arrangements in the church. So that's what the foxgloves are for. Most of this will be posies for the tables. And so having the smaller pieces, you've got to remember what everything's going to be used for. So she's got about 30 roses there. So, each of the arrangements can have a couple of roses in. Each of the arrangements can have a couple of ranunculus. And then they just get framed in the froth. Right, I'm going to make the buttonholes, and I'm going to show you how they are a miniature version of all of this. So here are the buttonholes, not especially leafy. Oh, tea cake. Not especially leafy. But tea cake, I love them. I love them. So this one's the groom, and he's got 3 rosebuds and 1 geum, a little bit of that physocarpus, one of those quite manly, I don't know why I think they're manly, but anyway, Sweet William, and 1 little ranunculus in there. And the rosebuds will slowly pop. So this is Friday morning. That rose will be open tomorrow, and it's good pale pink. It's really, so they won't be so hot. The colours won't be so hot as the roses pop. And some of the roses are, so this one is Port Sunlight. So that is an apricot rose. And then this one is Boscabel, so that's a sort of salmon pink rose. So they're not all the same. there's another port sunlight. So they're not all the same, but there we are. I shouldn't like my work so much. I mean, it's not my work. I like the flowers. I love the flowers. And I just love it when they come together and they look really sparkly. Right, and as is often the case, I've just pudged the bride's bouquet a little bit because I just felt it needs a bit more length. I'll show you. So here, whichever way she carries it, I'm 5'2". Most people are a bit taller than me. So she can carry it like this, or like that, or like that, whichever way she wants to. But I'm imagining she'll carry it kind of like this. It's hanging sort of at an angle. But that's, if you hold it against me, 5'2", that's plenty big enough. Doesn't need to be any bigger because it'll overwhelm even a normal taller person. And also it doesn't want to be too heavy. And there's no weight to that at all. It's really very light. I adore the sorrel. I love the movement of the sorrel. Anyway, there you go. There's the pudged bride. So I'm going to pudge the bridesmaid now. This is what happens when I've got time. It's 8 o'clock. They're not picking up for an hour. And there's the bridesmaid. Dinky, dinky, light as a feather. Really important that the flowers don't weigh a ton. You don't want people having to kind of reveal their biceps as they're walking down the aisle. Well, although they might be very proud of their biceps. Anyway, I'm proud of mine. Right, there's the bridesmaid. I have to say, Grand Elder, wonderful umbellifer. Don't waste it if you've got it. So there we have it. Bride at the back, little bridesmaid, all the buttonholes, and lots of buckets to arrange with. And this is a really, really good way to keep your wedding flower spend affordable. You don't even need me to do or anybody to do your bouquet. Obviously not everybody wants to do all of it, and there's a lot to do with weddings. So do be sensible about how much time you've got. But, as a way to keep the cost down, order mixed buckets of flowers from your local flower farmer, and they will know how to make a good balance so that you can then make lovely arrangements. I've been here for a long time, so I know the church where this wedding's happening. I can see the colours of that, jewel colours, so this is going to work very well. I know where I live, and your local flower farmer will also know your area, probably know your venue, probably know wherever it is, all of it. They'll know about it. So they'll be able to help you and advise you. If you are a flower farmer, I hope that this has been perhaps interesting in thinking about how you would balance mixed buckets. Because certainly when people start out, it's a really great way to sell your flowers. There are weddings all the time. No matter what's happening in the news, the weddings, except for when there's COVID, even then, in a tiny way, they carry on. And so the mixed bucket way of selling your flowers is a really good way of doing it. But it's not a sort of, it's worth really thinking about the balance of what you're putting in and why you might put 10 stems of sorrel or 10 stems of foxgloves and what might be how they might be used in the great scheme of things. So anyway, I hope you've had a lovely time. I do have 12 affiliates who are colleagues of mine around the country who, on an invitation-only basis, are on my website as people who I think do very good quality, affordable wedding flowers. And so I will put a link to all of them in this clip. So they're not all over the, next year hopefully we'll have a few more, but I just did it this year as a tester. So I will put all of them in the links so that if you are getting married anywhere near them, they know about this. They're very good at this. And they too agree with me that wedding flowers should not cost the earth, either in finance or in resources. They grow very good quality flowers and love to work with people really locally. So I'll put a list of all of them in the blurb, so that if you're in their area, you could get in contact with them if you're getting married. I think this year probably everybody's organised, although I did have somebody last evening for mid-August, and I had to say, I'm sorry, I'm booked up. But for next year, people are already beginning to book in for 2025. So think about it. Anyway, I hope this has been interesting. Also available are my wedding flowers and pedestal vase, big urn, and so on. All my floristry demos are available as downloads on my website. So again, if you're thinking of doing your own flowers or being a person who supplies flowers like this, do have a look at those, because they'll really help you work out whether it's a good idea, whether you think you can do it or whether it would be too much, or how much of it you'd like to do. So for example, today's bride, bright girl, very intelligent, they've got a lot to do to arrange all these flowers. Fantastic. And she sensibly said, actually, can you make the bride's bouquet, the bridesmaid, and the buttonholes, which I can do relatively quickly, and it's just too much. So they're going to have a brilliant time at the church, I hope, with all these lovely flowers. And at the reception, and the weather forecast is sunny and happy. Thank goodness for that. So have a lovely weekend, everybody. Actually, I won't post this until after the wedding, obviously. The bride needs to see it all first. So I'll post it on Sunday night. But anyway, have a lovely weekend. And I hope this has been helpful, and talk about balance and colour. Oh, I love those orange gems. Anyway, bye-bye.